Good morning, good evening, namaste, hola, bonjour, gereme, terve, and marapan. This is Namya Joshi, your host for the day. Welcome to episode 84 of the podcast, Each One Teach 10, An Amazing World of STEM, an inspiring venture where we'll be discussing that STEM is a part of every day for every kid. We all will learn together how to build a STEM culture. Well, for today, my guest is Mr. Frédéric Harper. As the principal developer advocate at kubefirst, he helps developers and DevOps be successful with their Kubernetes journey. Fred has shared his passion for technology on the stage at multitudinous events around the world. He's helped build successful and healthy communities at NPM, Mozilla, Microsoft, DigitalOcean, and Fitbit. He's also the author of the book Personal Branding for Developers at Apress. Behind this extrovert is a very passionate individual who believes in the power of communication and cat videos. Well, it's an absolute honor to have you on my podcast today, Mr. Frédéric. So, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. First, thanks for having me. And you can just call me Fred. No need for a Mister. I know I'm old, but not that old. But no, life is good. And
Okay.
now I just realized that
We call it Fred then.
yeah. That's gonna make me feel a little bit better. Mister is my dad. But no, thanks for that amazing
Okay.
introduction. I mean, like now that I hear my bio out loud, it sounds a little bit pretentious, but hopefully I'm not. So yeah, no, just happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And it's an absolute pleasure for me as well. So, before we begin, we would love to know more about you and the work that you do.
Yeah, so as you said, I'm a developer advocate at kubefirst. I've been in tech for now 22, 23 years. It's been a long time. I started as a software developer, but like in the last 12 years ish, my job is to give love to developers or DevOps or GitOps people. So really like trying to help them being successful, whatever being successful means for them. So right now, it's been about a year and a half now. I'm working at kubefirst, and my job is really to help people to move to cloud native, to move to Kubernetes, or if they're already like on the cloud, like on the cloud native, or using like Kubernetes for deploying their application, their services, just trying to help them to use their open source free software to save them a lot of times and a lot of headaches.
That's absolutely amazing. That you started your journey as a software developer and now it's moving forward to inspiring developers to achieve their goals. That's amazing. So, can you briefly describe your journey in tech and how you became the principal developer advocate at kubefirst?
Yeah, so as a developer, I've been in tech for 20 something years now. So maybe you were right to call me Mister before. I've been doing that for a long time. I was lucky enough that where I live and probably many places, they ask you like, hey, what do you want to do? What do you want to do for the rest of your life? And they ask you this around like 13, 14 years old. And I was lucky enough that I had a computer at home, which today seems like everybody has a computer at home, at least like a smart device. But it was not the case when I was younger. So I was lucky that I was introduced to like computer stuff, and I just loved it. Basically, actually, I was loving playing games on the computer, which is not the same as software development. But I decided to go in tech and learn more about like being a software developer. And I was lucky enough that I liked it. Because I'm still here. So for the first about 10 years of my career, I was doing software development most of the time. Sometimes I was doing architecture, working with customers, like trying to, help the team build project. I created software like standalone software, mobile application, web application, manage team, manage project. But I would say most of my time, 80+% of my time was always about like creating software, coding, being a software developer. And I loved it. I still love coding. I still call myself a developer, but I'm a really social extrovert person. And at some point, I was starting to do what a developer advocate does for a living, but I was starting to do that on my free time. So I was starting to speak at conferences. I organized events. I was starting to write blog article and doing like some of the things that developer advocate do. And at some point, Microsoft approached me and said, like, hey, you know what? Do you want to be paid to do what you're doing on your free time? Like, we're looking for someone like you. And to be honest, I said no at first because Microsoft was not was not as friendly as they are right now. They were not really like into open source, open data, interoperability, but they were looking for someone to do that. And they pinged me a couple of times, and at some point I was like, okay, let's go have a coffee chat, and like, let's see how it goes. And actually, yeah, what they were offering me is like not being like any other Microsoft person, but being that person who's gonna work with the open source community, like talk about interoperability, work with open data. So my job was really to, do things that Microsoft were not well known in the past. So that was my first developer advocate job. And since then, it is what I'm doing at different companies. So you name a couple of companies where I worked before. And for the last 1 year and a half now, I've been at kubefirst. Really, the title principal is just because, you know what, I'm doing that for like more than 10 years. So I have some knowledge, some expertise. I personally do not care that much about the title, but I still think they're important because they show a little bit like where you are in your career, and it can help you maybe have like a better salary for the next job or stuff like that. But in the end, long story short, I've been there for a year and a half. It's really amazing to help people understand a little more the cloud native space, educate people on Kubernetes, myself learning a little more because I know a little bit about Kubernetes and cloud native because of my time at DigitalOcean. But now this is my entire focus. So for me also, there was a new learning journey to try to get that expertise and that experience around those technology while helping developers or DevOps or people that want to go into GitOps to be successful with our platform. So it's a great journey so far. Loving it, loving the team, loving the product, which I think is really important for what I do. Like being a developer advocate, you need to be a little bit passionate about, at least a little bit passionate about your product and your service. And I'm in the right spot for this right now.
That's absolutely substantial. That you've, shared such an inspiring journey of more than 20 years. And you were talking about when we're young, people ask us what we want to do for the rest of the life. And luckily for you, you had a computer. So you positively decided that I want to do something related to computers. So it's not just playing games, but learning about software development was the key for you. So you mentioned that 80% of your time was spent towards your passion, that was coding and creating softwares. And you also been a developer advocate. And then your first job, when you talk about being approached by Microsoft, and you at the end agreed to work with them because you got the opportunity to be a person to work with the open source community. And for all of these years, you've been helping people and educating them to, inspire them to achieve their goals, like you said earlier. So that's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, no, that was a great time.
Yep, absolutely. So moving on to my next question for you is, what exactly is kubefirst and how does it help developers and DevOps teams with their Kubernetes journey?
That's a good question. So kubefirst, what we are offering to people is it's an open source free GitOps platform that really helps you to kickstart your Kubernetes or cloud native journey. If you try to move to cloud native for different reasons, creating a Kubernetes cluster right now, it's not difficult. There's a lot of services out there at different cloud company where you go on their interface and you do 2-3 clicks and you have a Kubernetes cluster, or you can even use CLI, you create a cluster, but you have an empty cluster. it's not what I would call production ready. So what kubefirst is doing for you is that with a single command line or using your beautiful UI and styler, you can like create a Kubernetes cluster on the cloud we are supporting. So we support right now DigitalOcean, Civo, Google Cloud is in beta. We have AWS. We're supporting also Vultr in beta. And we have Key3s for people that have like different specific needs, like maybe bare metal needs or home lab. And we also have like a local experience, so you can use Key3D to test kubefirst and see how it's working for you. But what we do, we create what I call a production-ready cluster. So with that cluster, what you end up with is, yes, the initial Kubernetes cluster that you would have created yourself, but we also install and configure a couple of applications to really help you get started. We install HashiCorp Vault for you. We install, we make available Terraform with Atlantis. We install Argo CD, Cert Managers, and many more applications that are like install, but also configure to work together. Because what you want to do once you create a Kubernetes cluster, you need to have like something to manage your CD pipelines. You need to have something to manage your like secrets or whatever you're going to need to access from your application. You need something to manage deploying your application and having those applications being accessed from outside of the cluster for the rest of the world. And all those things tied together, it takes sometimes to make it work. Like even if you have experience, like it can take you weeks, it can take you even months to learn about those technology, install them correctly, configure them so they work together. So we do the hard work for you. But on top of that, we create a GitOps repository. So we really believe in like the GitOps principle, and the GitOps has a practice when it comes to cloud native. So we create that GitOps repository for you, where you have everything that we created on the cluster for you is within the GitOps repo. So you end up with a cluster that you own on your own cloud provider that you choose, and you end up with a GitOps repository with everything that we created for you that you own, because you can choose to create that GitOps repository on your GitHub account or on your GitLab account. So at the end of the day, for let's say the longest time that it can takes to create that cluster, it's around 30-45 minutes if you choose AWS, because there is a lot of services and it's a little bit slower to create all those things to have your cluster ready. But if you choose a smaller cloud that is still quite powerful, like Civo or DigitalOcean, it can take about 20 minutes maximum to create that cluster with everything installed and configured for you. So has someone who is either if you're new to cloud native, you get that cluster with all the tools. You can experiment. You can, mess up things, because you can just destroy the cluster, create it again as quickly. It's a good way to learn about those technology. But even if you have the cloud native experience, as I said before, it can take you weeks to have to reach that point where you have a production ready cluster. So now you can do it way quicker. It's easier to do that. And now you can concentrate on what you do best, which is, as a developer, it's created your application, it's making your application, it's creating your application, coding your application. So now you have that cloud native cluster ready with all the technology you need to be successful, and you can just go to the next step and install the application or deploy the service that you want on your cluster. And you're going to end up with, infrastructure as code, a way to manage your repositories, also a way to manage your secrets with Vault, and a pretty good way to manage also access to your cluster and different tools that you install, because we use Vault as a whole IDC provider. So you have SSO out of the box. And last thing I want to say about that, I know there was a small question, but here's a long answer. The last thing I want to say about that also is that we, on top of that, we create a management platform for you. So right now, depending on the cloud you choose, because we did not implement this on every cloud yet, we're still working on that, we basically provide to you a management platform. So we create that physical management cluster for you with the beautiful UI that you can use to manage your cluster, but also create workload cluster if you want. So from the start, we create 3 virtual clusters. workload cluster, and you can create still virtual one, physical one, and you all have access to that beautiful interface. But you know what? If you don't want to, everything is in the GitOps repository, and you can basically from that point do whatever you want. So it's an opinionated platform. We try to keep the technology that we install at a minimum, what we think you need to be successful. And on top of that, after that, since it's your cluster, if you don't like a choice we made, you can change it. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it takes a little more like groundwork to make it work, but at the end, you can install whatever else you need. And we have what we call the GitOps catalog, which is kind of like a free marketplace where if you want to install other application that you need to do whatever you want to do, you can just do what I call a proper ClickUps, where you go in the interface, there's the GitOps catalog, and you say like, hey, I want to install Prometheus. You click install, and what's going to happen is that we're going to basically do commit on your GitOps repo with a proper YAML file defining the Prometheus application you want to deploy. So you're still going to respect the GitOps principle. So it's a long explanation because I wanted to be sure that everybody understands what we're doing, but you end up with the production-ready Kubernetes cluster with everything you need to be really successful, and just move to the step where you deploy your application and or your service.
Indeed, that was really an informative answer, and don't worry about the answers going long, because I believe my audience is always looking forward to informative answers, and it can be beneficial for them. You can kickstart your cloud native, and you can create a production ready cluster. You can manage it. It basically helps to make your work easier. And also talked about making a ready a GitHub repository where everything in the cluster is there in a GitHub repository. And like you mentioned that it takes weeks to reach the point of creating a production ready cluster. But with kubefirst, you can already have a production ready cluster and focus on the application building, so that it is getting not starting from scratch, but beginning from the part where you actually need to focus and put all your hard work into. And again, like it also mentions, you talked about having a management platform when they can make their own changes, nicks and peaks here and there, and then they can tune it according to their preferences. Thank you so much for sharing that. It was really informative.
My pleasure.
All right, so my next question for you is, what are some of the current trends in Kubernetes and cloud native technologies that developers should be aware of?
I think my answer is going to be a little bit boring because there is like so many new technologies out there. It's really hard to like keep track of everything that is new, but my answer to that question would be probably two things. The first one, and maybe I'm preaching for my own stuff, but I would say GitOps. I mean, like it's been here for a couple of like for a while now, but it's still new-ish because people like they don't really know about GitOps. It's a term that was coined a couple of years ago that I feel is gaining in popularity. It seems like it's something that could be a little more complicated to do at first, because your Git repository become your source of truth. So everything you do on your cluster need to be in your Git repository. So it seems like it's a little more hard work than like just going on your terminal and installing stuff instead of like having to create a YAML file that you put in your GitOps repo. But I see a lot more developers that got kind of like hooked on the principle, the GitOps principle, because there's so many benefits out of it. Like when you decide to create a cluster and you decide that your cluster is going to be created based on what you put in your GitOps repo, it brings like history. It brings a process where someone needs to review your pull request before doing something in the cluster. It's easier to roll back. There is like a lot of benefits around GitOps, and it's something that obviously I believed in. I was introduced to the principle when I joined kubefirst, and obviously this is what we do with our product. So it's what I said, like I may have some bias toward it, but the more I talk to people about GitOps, the more interest there is. So I believe that it's gaining in popularity, and people really understand that like the small hoverhead that I may have at the beginning using the GitOps principle or building my cloud native ecosystem with like my source of truth as my main point is very valuable. The other trend, I have a second one that, again, it may not be like mind-blowing trend, but I was really surprised and also excited about it. The people wants to go back on premises. When I started in tech, like mostly everybody were hosting their own stuff, and at some point we had like the big three, like AWS, Amazon, and Google, that started to like offer like public cloud, and they started to offer like platform as a service, and like a lot of those things. And a lot of company, like we started first to offload like whatever we wanted to put on the server in those public cloud, because before we had like our server like in a rack somewhere. Sometimes it was even in our office. I remember I had one in my wardrobe at home, hosting my own stuff. And at some point I was like, I can do it, but like I don't want to do it. I want someone else to be responsible of like all the hardware and be sure that things are working. So we started to put everything on public cloud, and that's still a good opportunity out there. But like I hear more and more people that want to go back on premises, like they want to own their own stuff. And it's the same thing for any SaaS services out there. Like there is a lot of like, at some point we're hosting everything ourselves, and we decided to like, hey, you know what, like managing that software, managing that platform is a lot of time that I could put where I can bring real focus to the actually where I can bring real return on investment to the company. So I'm going to offload that to someone else, and I'm going to pay like a monthly fees to have someone like managing that application, updating that application, and basically paying for a service instead of doing everything myself. But even for that, because Kubernetes made it a little bit easier, like to host a lot of their things, manage like scalability and stuff like that, I feel like people are starting to move toward like, again, self-hosting their own application or self-hosting application that they used to pay a monthly fees per month. So I guess like for that trend is really like, I feel like people are starting to take back the ownership of the technology they use, which kind of makes sense because I remember when I started, and I feel old when I say that, but like we had a limited amount of technologies, and it was maybe a little bit easier to manage. And at some point it became overwhelming, like too many technologies, too many things to manage. So we offload that work to other people. But now we're really dependent like all the services out there. So people want to, again, take the ownership of those things. So as I said, they may not be the most exciting trend out there, but those are two that are related to cloud native and what I see when I talk to people in their community, when I talk to people at conferences. Those are two things that come back quite often. So those are my trends that I have in mind right now, that I personally find really exciting.
Absolutely, that is really considerable. Like you talked about GitOps, wherein you can take your cluster, and based on what you put up in your repository, you can basically like the entire system is described declaratively. So it's gonna approve the changes that can be automatically applied to the system, and that's ensuring correctness and alert on divergence. So it's basically providing increased productivity, scalability, security, and as well as compliance for the DevOps. And also you talked about people wanting to go back to their premises, wanting to own their own stuff instead of always uploading it on public cloud. So I totally agree with that thing, because people indeed have the right to take the ownership of the tech that they use, which again is right. So thank you so much for sharing the trends that you see in Kubernetes these days. So we talked about the trends, but I think there are also problems and challenges that people usually face. So what are some of the biggest challenges you see developers and DevOps professionals facing today, and how can they overcome them?
That's a good question. I'm gonna give two answers because I don't know, I love to talk, I guess. But the first one's gonna be a quick one. I think it's based a little bit on related a little bit to the trend. I think I mentioned it a little bit, but there is so many technologies out there that it's a little bit overwhelming. Like now when you start a project, you need to choose basically like 10 to 20 like libraries and services and APIs you're going to choose out there. I feel like we solve a lot of issues with those like third-party API and all those libraries that are available right now that we didn't have like when we're coding a couple of years ago. But it's like there's a lot of benefits to those. But like I feel like just starting to work on a project can be a little bit overwhelming. That can be exciting because you can test like a lot of technologies. But like as someone who is starting in tech or as someone who wants to change job, like what should you focus on? Like what are the technologies that are used right now, but will still be used in a while? Because like we have new libraries that pop up like once in a while, but also some will stay, some will die. So I think it's a big challenge right now to really try to understand or know where should you focus as a developer, what technology should you learn about as a DevOps. Things that I learned the hard way is that there's no way for you to learn everything or to know about everything. I mean, like it's part of my job as a developer advocate to learn about new technologies and always like know a little bit about the trends. So I can have discussion with developers, I can have discussion with DevOps people, and I can be credible when I talk to them, or I may find something that is interesting for me to create content about. But so it's part of my job, and I cannot even keep up with all the trends, so it's impossible. So I think as a developer, as a DevOps person, I think it's really like do your research, find technology that feels like, hey, it's relevant, and hopefully that's still going to be relevant in a while. Or find like, hey, the type of job you want to do, and like try to see like what's involved usually in those type of jobs, what the potential employers looks for those kind of like specific job, which technology they're requiring you to have a little bit of knowledge, and try to focus on those. So it's still always good to know a little bit about everything, or at least like know what's happening, but there's no way for you to be an expert in everything. So it can be really overwhelming. And I do a lot of coffee chat with like people that want to start in tech, and everybody is overwhelmed because there is so many technologies. So try to find something that you're passionate about. Try to find something that obviously there is demands for from the employers, and I think that would be like one of the challenges out there. And related to that is finding a job right now. The market right now is really difficult. I mean, I don't know. I don't have the experience right now because I've been at my job for a year and a half. I'm not looking for a new job, so I'm not in that specific market right now. But from all the discussion that I had, from everything I see on LinkedIn, it's brutal out there. It's a big challenge right now because we're kind of like post-pandemic. There's like all that economy things. A lot of like medium to large companies to do a lot of layoff, which means that like there's a lot of people out there looking for jobs. And the tech industry is more open than it ever been. So like when I started in tech, you needed like a formal diploma to find a job. Now you can do a boot camp, which I find amazing. I mean, like it's about learning the technology. It's not really just about having the diploma. It's about learning the things, being able to do it, being able to show people that you can do it. But at the same time, it means that there is more people looking for a job in a moment where it's really difficult. The good news, though, is that it always been a cycle like that in tech. Like 2-3 years actually before 2020, like the market was like amazing. It was like everybody was finding job. It was easier. And prior to that, we had like a 2-3 years where it was like really hard in tech. So it's really like up and downs in tech. So the good news is that now we're in the down. I feel like it's slowly coming up again from what I see, not based on my experience because I have a job, but I feel like we're slowly starting to come back a little bit, but still it's really brutal out there. Like I see people with a lot of experience that are struggling to find jobs, and they like apply to many jobs and do a lot of interviews, and they've been looking for months. So I'm not saying that to be negative, but I'm just saying that to, set the reality for like people have those expectations out there. And it's a little bit more complicated if you're new to the tech industry, because you may not have professional experience to show people that you have the expertise. So my solution to that, and I say quote unquote solution, one way to help you, it's not a magic trick, but one way to help you is really to put things out there. This is what I tell everybody. It's kind of like putting work on tops of like already trying to find a job, which is a job in itself, like trying to find a job. But if you put things out there, meaning that you write blog articles about what you've learned, you create a live stream podcast, or you create videos about demoing the stuff that you build. You put things on GitHub, even if they're like own work from a boot camp or tutorials that you've done online. All those things that you put out there, share things on social media, all those things help you to like create some resources and kind of like a portfolio that you're going to be able to show to potential employer. If you're new to tech, you're going to be able to show this to potential employer and say like, hey, you know what? I didn't do this professionally, but now you can have an idea about like how I code, or at least like what's my way of thinking, how I try to solve issues, what's the issues that I had, and like how I solved them. So all those things that you can put out there, they're kind of like a portfolio. And don't be afraid to do that. I know it's kind of like intimidating to put your code out there. People will just like review it, say like bad things about it. People sometimes are mean, or you may think that like the topic that you want to write about, like everybody, like there's already like 1,000 articles out there about that topic. It's fine. Wrote the 1,001 article about the topic, because you're going to have like your specific like special sauce, secret sauce, or your vision about that issue, that technology. And even if it sounds a little bit like any other article out there, it's yours. You wrote them. So again, that's a piece you can show to potential employers about, again, your expertise, or the way you're thinking, or the things you're learning, or the knowledge you have. So it's one way to really like work on your personal brand and creating that material that you can show potential employers. And the second solution, I wouldn't say solution, the second tips to that, connect with people. The networking, the connection you have is really important. So, there is like free coffee chats out there, people offering free coffee chat. Book time with them, like 15, 30 minutes. Just ask them advice, ask them tips if they're in the tech industry for a longer time. Don't be afraid to connect with people, even if they're not offering free coffee chat. Worst case, you tell someone that like work at a company where you would like to work, or have the job that you would like to get, or have like mind-blowing experience, or have like a really great presence online. Ping them and say like, hey, would like to take 15 minutes, 30 minutes with me. I just want to ask you a question, learn about your journey. And the worst case that's going to happen, they're going to say no. But in the best case scenario, most of the time, they're going to be more than happy to take time with you, because we didn't reach that point in our career without the help of other people. So I think it's like a circle, and like we really need to give back to the people. And I think most of the people do give back to the newer people in tech, to the younger people. So it's a way to do that. And when you connect with those people, they became part of your network. They became potential friends. They became, you don't know the person you talked to yesterday. Maybe they're going to hire someone in a month, or maybe their team's going to hire someone, or maybe they're going to know someone who's going to hire someone. So networking, connecting with people is super, super important.
That is really persuading, to be honest. That there is like so many technologies around us that it gets overwhelming for developers to know where should they focus, and which is the tech as a developer that they should learn about, and where should they put their trust into. So like a great solution to that, like you mentioned, is to do your research, narrowing your niche. And like even when you talked about the jobs that they can look forward to, but since the market is so diverse, there are different challenges due to economy showdown, due to layoffs, and with different technologies. And to be a part of it, a lot of competition as well. So what you need to do is you need to stand out. So a great solution that you mentioned is to put the things out there, be it articles, live stream podcasts, your GitHub account, portfolios that can help you to create resources and a portfolio for yourself, wherein you can showcase your work that you've done, that yes, that's my history of the work that I've been doing, and help a lot of people online. And of course, like networking is the key. You can take advice, and the worst they can do is say no, but the best, like you said, is you get a chance to learn from them. And I relate to that a lot because to get guests on my podcast, I've never been shy to approach people because I've always had this feeling the worst they can say is no, but till date nobody has said like no to me, so I'm really grateful for that. So again, like I totally agree with all the points you have mentioned, and yes, relatable at
Yeah.
every single point. Thank you.
And it's good because what you're doing right now, like I don't know the reason you had to start doing that podcast. Actually, you explained it a little bit, like you want to share with people, you want to give access to the knowledge of other people, but at the same time, like you do this really selfish, not selfishly, but actually like for everybody else, like you do that for other people. But there's a lot of benefits for you doing that. Like you get that online presence, like every guest you had on the show, now you know them, now you're connected with them, you've grown your network, your face is out there, like potential employers, you can say, hey, you know what, like I'm doing that podcast, like go see like all the things that I talk with people, like all the guests that I had. And like even if like doing a podcast is not related to your job, like it is to mine, like as a developer advocate, let's say you want to look for software engineering job, like there's a chance like your job does not involve doing live stream or podcast, but like it's just a plus for the company because they're going to look at you and they can say like, wow, like she's a brilliant person, she's not shy, she connect with people, she has a great network, she know how to communicate, which is super important in any jobs out there, she has some knowledge about the technologies, and like there is like a lot of like side benefits, even if it's not related specifically to your job, to have that podcast, to have that live stream. So it's why I encourage people. I know it's a lot of work doing that, just doing the back and forth. Like I think we wrote to each other like 10 times just to like being sure like we're going to schedule in the right time when it fits within my calendar and yours, and like you introducing yourself. Like it's a lot of time. You need to take the time now to do that podcast with that guy who is talking to for way too long. But like in the end, like you get that like amazing podcast that you can share with the rest of the people, but also it's part now of your portfolio. So folks, take the time to like create those content out there, because first it's just nice to give back to the tech community, to create great content that will help people to like get some education on some specific topic, or just know more about like the journey of other people, or just like connect with like some people that make sense. But on top of that, there's a lot of benefits for you to do that. So yeah, this is what I had to say.
Totally, absolutely agree with you. Like, because my purpose for this podcast when I began is, not just to create a platform for myself to learn, but then it was like a three-way thing. So for me to learn, to give a platform to my guests to come and share their experiences, and have a platform where everybody can listen to different ways of game-based learning, STEM engagement, coding, and basically making the classrooms more lively. So that was the purpose has been. And I think getting such diverse guests on the podcast like yourself has helped me to learn a lot of things, and I'm sure the audience has learned a lot as well. Right. So I have a fun question to ask you. Like I remember you talking about that you mentioned about this thing. The people usually ask us that what do we want to do when we grow up, and luckily for you, you had it in mind that I wanted to do something related to software engineering. So before that, like before you actually were like around 13, 14, did you ever think of something else that what did you want to be when you were a kid?
Oh my God, that's such a good question. Uh, it's been a while that I've been a kid, and to be honest, I do not think so. I think I went from like I was a kid, and I thought that I was going to be a kid forever, to the reality caught up with me, and was like, hey, you know what? At some point, you need to become an adult. And seriously, it. I don't remember all the specifics, but it's really like when I was in here we have like I think it's third years of high school, or even second years of high school, where they came to you and they're like, okay, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? And I'm pretty sure I picked software development or computer stuff because I had no idea what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And I was like, oh, you know what? This morning I was just playing a game before going to school, and yesterday I was like chatting on something called Higher Seed that like is still there, but not popular anymore. It was like a chatting software, and I was chatting with folks, and I was just amazed to the fact that I could communicate with like stranger like that with text, and I was like, there's something interesting with the technology, and it was starting to be something more popular that we know was the future. It was starting to be really like the future, not as much as today, but it was started like we know that it was going to the future, and it was like, yeah, okay, maybe I think I can do that. So I don't have like, I didn't want to be an astronaut or like, I don't know, like a firefighter. I was just like a kid playing with my stuff and like seeing my friends. And at some point, reality was like, hey, you need to do something with your life. And it was really like I flipped the coin. I was like, okay, first idea is like computer stuff. Seems fine to me. And as I said, I was really lucky because there's a big difference between playing games and creating software. And I was just like, okay, I like it. I remember my when I went to college to learn software development, my first application was a Hello World, and it was in Turbo C++, and it was basically like a blue screen where you write like print LF or something, I don't remember, and hello word, and I compiled this, and I had a stupid application that was just like having like, I think, a black screen, and like it was written in gray or white, like hello world. And I had goosebumps. I'm talking about that story. I have goosebumps right now. I still remember that I was like, holy wow, like I've done that, and that is stupid. Right now you can do hello world easily. Everybody does it. Like people that are not even software developer, there's application out there that helps you create application, even if you don't have the knowledge. But at the time I was like, wow, that is what I want to do. So long story short, to say like, I don't think, or at least I don't remember I had like the job that I wanted to do when I was becoming an adult. But when reality caught up, I was like, did software development, and I was lucky because that was it. And I'm still in tech now. To be honest, there is like, it's not always a love story. There's some time that the tech industry really get on my nerves a little bit, but I would say I'm still there. It's been 20 something years, and I'm probably sure I'm gonna end up until I retire to still work in tech, because like it's still amazing being able to create stuff with your own hands, like not like as a manual person, but like with the keyboard, being able to create software that people use. And in my case, for the last years, just helping people being successful. It's such an honor and a privilege to be able to help people in different ways. Obviously, I hope they can be successful with my software, but what is good with my job is that I'm not a salesperson, so I'm going to help you no matter what. And there's so much like gratitude I have to be able to do that. So
Absolutely. Like your answer, it proves the love that you have for coding and technology. And indeed, like there's a difference between actually, being a gamer and being a person who's creating those games. Actually, because, you'll be able to experience the entire fun creating a software. So like you experience the way of, seeing how software is created, and that's when you decided, yeah, that's exactly what I want to do. And you've been in that field like ever since that time. So that's really, really inspiring. So moving on to my last question for you is, looking ahead, what excites you the most about the future of technology and developer communities?
oh, that's a good question. Probably everybody answer with like AI. I have a different thoughts about AI, meaning that like I know there's like a lot of possibility in the future. Right now, I'm not that excited because it's really pushed toward our throats. Like every software out there like had like AI features that quite often does not bring real values from our point of view. So now I feel like I'm a whole man yelling at the cloud, like, oh no, AI, stupid AI. I think there's like something's gonna come up. I don't think it's mature enough. So now I'm not answering your question, but I'm saying like what is not a trend to me or what is not exciting to me right now. I don't think it's like a like technology in itself, because I don't know, maybe I've been doing that for a long time, and like I get a little less excited about new technologies. Like once in a while there's something that excites me, but I have the feeling that we are bringing back the human side, and it seems weird to say that with AI, but I feel like we're bringing back the human side in tech. At some point, I feel like we lost it a little bit, And now, like most companies, they're creating communities, and they have like those Slack or Discord communities. Like there's a way to get in touch with people. Most companies right now, like it was not the case when I started, but most companies right now, they're looking for developer advocates, like building a developer relation team. So basically, my job as a developer advocate is being that like social, approachable, friendly, extrovert person for the company, technical, actually not extrovert, technical person for the company. And it's really like a people-centric job. And I feel like companies are starting to slowly go back to the human side of the equation again. I know it's kind of like conflicting with like, oh, the AI stuff, but like I see a lot more companies going back to like, hey, we cannot just sell to people. We need to connect with people. We need to understand their needs. We need to be able to solve issues that they have instead of like just selling. So it's not like that in every company, but I see that a little more in the last 2-3 years, and I think it's growing in fashion to really like go back to the human equation of technology. So again, we're trying to get rid of some of the stuff with AI, or making your job a little bit easier, or replacing some of the job with AI. But as a whole, I feel that the human side of the equation is coming back. Again, it's probably because it's exciting to me because my job is all about the human part of the equation. My job is all about connecting with developers, DevOps people. And I feel like it's important. I feel it's critical to be really successful and being like a good citizen in tech as a company, really having that human equation. So I see all those examples of company like really going back to the human side of it. So so again, it's not, for me, it's not a technology specific. It's not like a specific trends in technology. It's really like the human equations going back to that whole industry. I see people being more compassionate. I see people being more welcoming to new people in tech. I see like people that are in tech for a little bit longer giving back and really understanding that like, hey, it's not just about you, me, myself, and I. Like there's a whole community. There's like open source out there. There's like a way to be part of something bigger. And I feel like maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like maybe it's just my network or like what I see around me, but I feel like it's coming back a little bit. So that would be the thing that right now really excited me, because I was starting to become a little bit cynical about the tech industry and where we're going. But I see that trend is like a little bit coming back to what I feel is a little more healthier.
Absolutely, that is inclining that we're bringing back the human side in tech, like being a developer advocate like yourself. It's a people-centric job. We're connecting to people, understanding their issues and their needs, and you're basically adding the humanized element to technology, which is important because we cannot, live in a world being, just surrounded by artificial intelligence. We need to have that human element, the social emotional learning element, which is needed because like, even if you're talking about using AI, you cannot use AI completely to get your work done. You need to add that human element of smartness, of creativity, and of the emotion quotient as well. So that is important. And I really like you touched upon that topic because I totally relate with what your thoughts that you're giving, and I'm sure the audience will understand and totally relate to it as well. Thank you. So, before we end today's podcast, I would love to know where we can find you online, and would love to have a message from your side to the audience that's listening to us right now.
You can find me on LinkedIn. Feel free to hand me on LinkedIn. Just search for Frédéric Harper. I'm going to be more than happy to connect with you, even if I don't know you. I'm just like, if you work in tech or if you plan to work in tech, you're already my friend. I'm active a little bit on Twitter too. I refuse to call this X, so it's still Twitter for me. I'm there also. You can find me also on the kubefirst Slack community. So if you go on kubefirst.io, we have a Slack icon. I'm really there to help you. So if you start in the cloud native journey, even if you don't use our product, myself and the rest of the team, we're just bunch of friendly people. We're going to be more than happy to help you with your cloud native journey if we can. But we have a pretty extensive and broad experience when it comes to cloud native, and we just like helping other people. So even if you don't use our product, come to the kubefirst Slack. We're going to be more than happy to help you. And what can I say to your audience? Like, what would be one last word? I would say, it's hard right now in tech to find a job, but continue to fight the good fight. There is a job for you out there. Try to find the people that can help you in different ways. It's fine to ask for help. To have people review your LinkedIn or your resume, to have people put you in relation with other people at companies where you want to apply, to connect with people that are in tech for a little bit longer to get advices. It's okay to ask for help, but don't be desperate. Don't be depressed. I know it's not easy right now, but again, I feel like we're slowly coming back on the right side of the tech. Tech is not going away. Even with AI, we're still going to need people doing the work. So it's an interesting field with its ups and downs, pros and cons. But I would say in the end, it's a really beautiful business, and hopefully you're going to be able to be successful in it too. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the lovely message. And love to end our discussion with this quote that coding and developing in today's language is today's language of creativity. All the children deserve a chance to become creators instead of consumers of computer science. So thank you so much, Mr. Fred. It was lovely talking to you. Fred, it was lovely talking to you today. And thank you so much for being on my podcast. I really loved discussing about different topics, and I'm sure the audience loved the experience as well.
The pleasure was mine. Thanks a lot for having me, and thanks for doing that. That's amazing. You already have like a great future. You have a brilliant future in front of you with everything you're doing. So yeah, thanks for doing that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining and listening to this episode. And I'll see you in the next one. Till then, each one, teach 10. Have a nice day.